Good morning, learners. Our subject for today is Science 5 for Quarter 2, Week 6. And our topic is Modes of Reproduction in Plants. And the objective, at the end of the lesson, you are expected to recognize other means of plant reproduction, specifically through vegetative propagation. Like other organisms, plants can also reproduce using different ways. In the previous lesson, you learned about how plants undergo sexual reproduction. At this point, you will recognize other means of plant reproduction, specifically through vegetative propagation. Vegetative propagation is an asexual reproduction in plants using different parts like stem, roots, and leaves to produce new plants. Asexual reproduction does not involve the use of seeds to propagate. This lesson will give you an understanding on the different modes of reproduction among flowering and non-flowering plants. Doing the different activities or tasks in this lesson will help you identify the different parts that can be used to produce new plants aside from seeds. Before we go on with our lesson, let us answer first the preliminary activity. Are you familiar with horseradish, fiddlehead fern, and mosses? If you know them, have you tried looking at their parts? Below is a chart for you to complete. Try to draw each plant. So the name of plant we have horseradish or malunggay, fiddlehead fern or pako, and mosses lumot. For the second column, you have to draw the plant. And for the third column, you have to identify the classification of the name of plant. I will do the first plant. So here is the drawing of malunggay. And for the classification with flowers. Now, you have to answer the second and the third one. The previous lesson provides you the understanding about flowers as reproductive organ of fruit-bearing plants to produce seeds to grow new plants. In general, plants are classified into two major groups, the flowering and the non-flowering plants. Flowering plants are those that have an obvious flower as accessory organ. In botany, which is the branch of science that deals with the study of plants, they are called as angiosperms. Plants belong to angiosperm family, reproduce bisexually by means of their flowers. The presence of flowers may give clue that the plant produces seeds that mature within the fruits. There are two groups of angiosperms, dicotyledonous and monocotyledonous plants. Dicotyledonous plants are plants with netted veins and with two cotyledons in its embryo. Some examples of dicotyledonous plants are beans, peas, daisies, while monocotyledonous plants are bamboos, bananas, and lilies. Now that you have learned the monocot and the dicot plants, let us answer learning task 1. Observe your surrounding. List down the plants that possess the given description. Below on monocot and dicot. Now for the dicot and monocot, we have the seed, the root, the vascular, the leaf, and the flower. But to identify if the plant is a monocot, for the seed, it has one cotyledon. For the roots, we have fibrous roots. And then for the vascular, scattered. And for the leaf, parallel veins. And for the flower, multiples of three. While dicot, it has two cotyledon. And for the roots, tap roots. Vascular, ringed. And for the leaf, net-like veins. And flower, it has four or five petals. So you have to list down at least five monocotyledonous plants and dicotyledonous plants that possess the description. Flowers are important for plants to bear fruits and produce seeds. However, there are also plants that do not use flowers for reproduction. These plants are called non-flowering plants. In general, non-flowering plants may also be classified into two main groups. The first group produces spores, while the second group makes seeds to produce in absence of the flower as accessory organ. This time, let us answer learning task 2. There are non-flowering plants that do not produce flowers and seeds. There are plants that produce spores. There are plants where seeds are not developed inside the parts of the flowers. In this activity, try to rearrange the jumbled letters to know these plants. So on the first column, you have there the different letters, and for the second column, the meaning of that word, and for the last column, your answer. Okay, so you will answer it on your own. And for the learning task 3, based on the given description, identify the classification of plants found on the left side of each description. So we have the mosses, the ferns, and the conifers. So what is the description of mosses? They are small plants that produce spores for reproduction instead of seeds and don't grow flowers, wood, or true roots. So you have to identify the classification of that plant. For the fern, ferns generally reproduce by producing spores similar to flowering plants. Ferns have roots, stems, and leaves. So again, you have to classify or identify the classification of that plants. And the last one is the conifers. They produce cone-bearing seeds. All living conifers are woody plants and most are trees. Pines are typical examples of conifers. So identify again the classification of that plant. For the learning task 4, given the chart, put a check mark if each characteristic is true to each group of plants. So for the first column, we have the characteristics: flowers, seeds, spores, vascular stem as system or the transport of water and nutrients, the pollination, seed dispersion through wind and water, and the fruit, and flowering plants and the non-flowering plants. So you have to put a check mark if each characteristic is true to the flowering plants and non-flowering plants. So that concludes our lesson for this morning. So congratulations and thank you for watching.